There we go, we got a wheel off. I'm gonna take some pictures. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Spence here at Core 4x4, and today we're wrapping up the series we've been doing on the 3rd gen Ram. Now if you haven't watched the other videos, we started in the rear with a trailing arm kit to help with towing and axle wrap. Then we moved to the front and installed the track bar and new sway bar end links. And then also we installed a massive steering upgrade with our new 2.5 ton steering kit, as well as a steering box brace to really make the truck drive and feel like it should from factory, even at 5.5 inches of lift. And in last week's video, we did all of the prep to install this long arm kit. Now this video is the one I've been most excited for because the long arm upgrade is probably gonna be the most significant as far as drivability and flexibility on this truck. Now the customer has a 5.5 inch lift on this, and the kit did come with some drop brackets from the control arms. But before we get into install and start talking about that, I do want to go over when it's appropriate to get a long arm kit and kind of what you're looking for and what it actually does to improve your ride quality and your drivability. Now at factory height, your stock control arms are going to sit really parallel, almost level to the ground, and this allows your suspension, having these level, to cycle up and down properly and really just let your axle do what it's supposed to. It's supposed to move under the truck. Now as you lift the vehicle and as you move that axle further and further away from the frame, your control arm angle gets steeper and steeper. Now what happens here is when your suspension cycles and you go over a bump, you're now fighting to bring that axle forward and up as opposed to just going up and down. Now when you move to a long arm kit, you bring your mount points back further away from the axle, which allows you to run a longer arm. And the longer arm gives you a wider arc or range of motion for your axle to travel on, so those angles become less severe and really just allow your axle and your suspension to cycle properly. And what this does is this really helps you regain your drivability that you would have at factory, but at the higher lift ranges. Now typically on these trucks, after about 3 inches of lift, I start looking to upgrade to a long arm kit to really get that drivability, that flexibility, all the benefits back. And it's important to note this is a true 4-link. The radius style long arm kits that are available for these trucks, they come with some of the same issues. You don't have the mobility in your axle to actually cycle from side to side because having that upper control arm mounted to the lower really pins you into one range of motion, but any sort of off camber flexibility in your axle just isn't as fluid as a true 4-link long arm kit. Now drop brackets, I'm never a fan, but it is a good intermediate option between long arm and short arm and adjustable short arm. It does help bring those control arms down to get them more at a level angle and bring back some of your drivability. But at the very least, I'd recommend an adjustable arm, if not the full long arm kit. In our previous video, we did all our prep where we used a grinder and a Sawzall to remove our factory brackets, and then we painted the frame so things won't rust. If you haven't watched that video, check it out so you can see what's really involved in the full installation of this kit. Today, we're really just mounting the brackets, which takes 3 holes and 2 drill bits, and it's pretty straightforward install. We're gonna be using a drill as well as 2 different drill bits, a 9/16 and a 5/8 to drill the holes in the frame. And for install, we're gonna be using a 13/16, a 7/8, and a 15/16 socket, as well as an 1 5/8 crow's foot for the jam nuts. Now that should be everything we need to install the kit, so let's get over to the truck and start drilling some holes. What we're going to be doing today is removing our 2 crossmember bolts here, and we're going to make sure we support our crossmember. The other side's going to have the 2 bolts in, so it's not really going to move that much, but we just want to make sure we have a jack stand or something under here so nothing shifts on us. Once we remove our 2 crossmember bolts here, we can get our bracket up into place and mount it up to mark out for our drilling. Now the 3 holes we're going to drill are these 2 front ones, the support one down here, and our upper control arm bolt will go completely through the frame to the back side of the bracket to really clamp the frame and provide the support we need for that upper control arm mount. And then our last hole is the 5/8 hole on the rear here. So let's get the bolts off, let's get the bracket mounted up, and then we can start marking out to drill our holes. Okay, so before we get our bracket up into place, always feel along this factory weld because it's going to sandwich the frame right here. And where the cross member ties into the frame, it's much wider. And there's actually like a piece of slag from the factory weld. So we're going to grind that flat and then just check all your welds and make sure there's nothing weird sticking out because it is going to be a tight fit. So if we have to knock down any of the weld just to make this go a little easier, we're going to do that before we put our bracket up into place. All right, so now that we have our cross member bolts in, we just really want to make sure our bracket is lined up how we want before we start drilling holes. Now, for reference, this top edge of the bracket needs to be almost flush with the weld behind it. So right now the bracket's just sitting a little bit out. So to fix that, I'm gonna grab, now that we have bolts in our cross member, I'm gonna take this jack stand and just push it up a little bit here just to line up more flush with the frame. Then I'm gonna mark out my holes and we'll take it off. You can drill through your brackets. I'm not a fan of that because it does ruin the powder. So we're just gonna take the brackets all the way off and drill our holes from each side. I just applied a little pressure on the outside here to just square up the bracket with the frame. Now I'm gonna use the etching tool to just mark out. You can use a Sharpie or anything you have. I'm just gonna mark out all our holes. Now I'm going to mark out the back side as well, even though we may end up drilling just all the way through the frame. I just want to have a reference point on the back just to make sure I'm drilling straight. All right, so for our two lower holes here, we can drill and get our drill in from both sides, and that's the most accurate way to make sure you're lined up across your frame. We're just going to give ourselves a little mark on center to get our drill bits lined up perfectly. And again, like I said, you can drill through your brackets. That is an easy way to do this. I just don't like messing up the powder coat before we even install. So for us, we're gonna drill with the brackets off. You can also use a screwdriver for this, but one you don't care about. That worked. All right, so our makeshift punch failed, so I'm just gonna use a little drill bit to kind of get us centered. Ideally, an actual punch would work. Screwdrivers do work, but ours was too small. So we're just going to get a little hole going on center here. Okay. Well, his frame's filled with dirt. All right, one down. Whew. Great. Okay, don't break your drill bit. It's gonna be hot. All right, fit check.
Nice.
All right, so I just ran that bit through from the other side to make sure we can get our bolt through. This is going to be your hardest hole because this is where two sections of the frame overlap. So instead of being 3/16 thick, it's probably closer to 3/8 thick. So that'll be our hardest hole. These other two, we're just going through one sheet of frame. So let's get working on those. Don't break another drill. Whew, that was much easier. Our drill bit for this top hole is a little long, so I'm just going to stick it in a vise and cut it down. All right, so we got our holes drilled. I threw some rattle can on everything because we did have some bare metals. So while that's drying, I wanted to take a second and talk about torque specs. So for our two cross member bolts, we're going to go to 80 foot-pounds. On our rear 5/8 through the frame bolt, that's going to be 150 foot-pounds. And then our two 9/16 bolts here up front are going to be 120 foot-pounds. And then also our lower control arm bolt on both the frame and axle is also 150 foot-pounds. And then our axle side of the upper control arm, that's also 120 foot-pounds because it's a 9/16 bolt. Then on our jam nuts for our control arms, those are all 250 foot-pounds. I can't emphasize enough how important jam nuts are on an adjustable control arm. They need to be tightened and retorqued after driving. After this paint dries a little bit, we're going to get our brackets installed, torque down, make sure all our holes line up, and then we can bolt the arms on. So I did put our upper bolt in without the arm. I just wanted to make sure all our holes were lining up. So when we went to install the arms, it wasn't going to be an issue. This top one was a little tight. We were a little off on our drilling. This is the one we drilled all the way through from that side. It is okay if you want to give yourself some room for error to just use the 5/8 bit on the top. It doesn't have to be so close. Did have to impact it through a little bit just to thread it in, but that's okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to torque down our cross member bolts and then our 2 frame bolts, and then we'll get our arms measured out and we'll get them installed on the passenger side. So yeah, let's get at it. All right, so we got our bracket bolted onto the truck. It's all clamped down. We know our upper control arm bolts are gonna line up with a little help. So we're gonna set our control arm lengths. Now, when we took the factory ones off with the drop brackets, our axle did shift back. So it's gonna be a little bit of maneuvering to get it back in place, back where we want to. But on a 5.5 inch lift, we're gonna set our lower control arms at 34 inches bolt to bolt. And our upper control arms are gonna end up between 32.25 and 32.5 eye to eye. Now, when you have bent arms, a simple inward bend like this is actually really easy to measure, but something like this, where the upper control arm does have to come down around the body mount and then bend inward for tire clearance as well. So we have multiple bends in this. This is actually really difficult to measure. So we're gonna try to get as close as we can on the table here, and then we'll double check everything when we get it installed on the truck, because then we'll have an actual straight line between the 2 brackets. So on the lower control arm with the 1 bend, we're gonna make sure our johnny joints are lined up parallel to the body of the housing of the joint on each end. And then we're gonna measure our outside of the bend and inside of the bend. And we're gonna find the average between the 2. That's gonna be our true eye-to-eye length on these arms. So our inside length is 33.25 and our outside is 34 almost. We're just gonna start adjusting until we get 34 in the middle. These are left and right hand threaded, so we're gonna spin this one out a couple turns. And we'll also spin this one out a couple turns. 34 3/8, 33 5/8. So that's just about right. And again, we're just getting close on the table. So we have a starting point for when we go to put this on the truck. But when it's actually on the truck, we can pull our real measurement. Now this one, let's see where we're at. We're gonna just try. We're about 31 and some change, so we're gonna go out a bit. Let's go see if we can get these on the truck. We're not far off. Lots more. Okay. The kit comes with these cam washers for your axle side. This is to center the joint and the bolt in your cam slots. Now, if you didn't have to cut out your cam bolts like we did, you're welcome to reuse these. We do have all the adjustment in the arms now, and these will actually spin to adjust even with the slight bend in them. The uppers won't, but the lowers will. So you can make all your adjustments in the arms. You don't really need your cam bolts. They are nice for alignment and fine tuning when you get to the alignment shop. But we'll be pretty close on our length, and they'll be able to make any adjustments in the lowers to get things dialed in. It's pretty spot on. so that wraps it up for the passenger side. A couple points of note here. Upper control arm has these weird bends because we do have to come around the body mount here in order to clear this when we're tucking the tire. We're at full droop right now, so obviously we have a lot of clearance, but when this is back on the ground, I'll show you what it looks like when it's at ride height. Other than that, don't forget to leave this bolt out, and we'll do that on the driver's side until you get your upper control arm bolted in and seated in. I'm really happy with our measurements. Everything turned out pretty good on the truck, so we're just gonna move over to the driver's side. Now that we have this bracket on, we do need to reposition our hoist pad. If you can see on the other side, we have the driver side right on the cross member. This is a heavy truck. I didn't want to put all the weight as far back as this one, but in order to do the install, that's how we had to do it. So we'll move this pad right onto our new mount, and then we'll get that driver's side torn apart and get into it. So before we get to drilling on the passenger side, I just wanted to show you guys one of these. Highly recommend a hole saw like this. I totally forgot we had these in the other shop, so I went and grabbed one. This is 11/16, so it's a little oversized, which will actually help when lining up all your holes. So you can run the drill bits, the 5/8 and the 9/16. We're gonna do all the holes with this on this side, or as many as we can reach. They're actually shorter, so you can get up here. For the through hole here, obviously we'll have to use a drill bit. And we got the drive line, so we'll actually probably be drilling both of these all the way through. But this back one is your hardest one again, because it's 3/8 inches of steel on both sides. And geez, we got the transmission on this side. We might be able to drill this one. It's been a minute. All right, let's start with this one. All right, that's the outside layer. That's hot. Get that off of there. Oh, way better. Okay. So I do have the rear frame bolt in and the cross member bolts, but I want to make sure, you can't see it, but there's still a little room for this to move around. You want to make sure to test fit your upper control arm bolt. And it's honestly the first thing we're going to torque down on this side. Just make sure it goes through and lines up. If you need to ream anything out or open up a hole or do anything, we want to figure it out now before we start torquing everything down. We'll go over to the table, measure the upper arm, we'll get it in here, and then we can really start putting everything together. I'm going to check our upper control arm measurements. It's more important that they match. So I will pull a measurement from bolt to bolt now that they're installed and we're not worrying about the bends. Much easier to adjust the upper if we need to make any adjustments now. And then at the alignment shop, since we're really close on the uppers, they can get all their caster adjustments, any of that out of the lower control arms, which are much easier to adjust after they're installed. So I'll grab a tape measure, we'll measure the arms and see where we're at. Oh, friggin', we got it pretty good. 32¼ outside bolt to outside or inside, and 32¼ So I am on the same flat on the outside, and I'm measuring to the flat of the inside. That gives us our center to center, and right here we're 32¼ and it's the exact same on the passenger side, and that's what we care about right now. So we're gonna just go measure our lower control arm out at 34 inches and match it to passenger as well. You can't adjust them while installed, so that's where we're gonna make all our adjustments for alignment and everything. One more point to note, on the driver's side especially, as your suspension cycles, your track bar is gonna be pushing your axle to the passenger. So for this bend, when we set our jam nuts, we're gonna set this bend a little further out this way to give us more room to clear the body mount. Instead of being down like this, we will set them a little out like that. And that's all you need to do, just to make sure you're not hitting or rubbing when you're cycling your suspension. So, but that's it for that. Let's go get the lower, measure it out, and put it in. Got it. All right, that was 150. All right, so that wraps it up for not only the long arm kit install, but unfortunately the whole series on this Ram 3500. Now, if you have any questions about any of the products in this series or any of the installation, please just throw it down in the comments or feel free to reach out, because we're happy to help and answer questions. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because that really helps us in the content we're making, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.